We're talking about the latest NBA draft rumors surrounding the Miami Heat on today's show, which include multiple different players working out for Miami, plus an updated look at my top draft targets at pick number 20, as well as some UDFA targets as well. I am Nic Rohloff. This is the Heat Report by Chat Sports. And if you followed me on Twitter, you would have already known about the 4 players that the Heat have worked out. I put that on my Twitter. So this is why you follow me, because I will put out news and more thoughts around this basketball team over there prior to our YouTube video. So go follow me today at Nic_Rohloff. I promise you won't regret it. But the 4 players that the Heat have worked out to this point of filming, we're filming this on Thursday, June 5th. Marcus Williams, guard from San Francisco. Jamir Watkins, a forward/wing from Florida State. And then 2 other guards, Zeke Mayo from Kansas. And then Money Williams, yes, that is his name, the guard from Montana. And most of these guys, if not all of them, will likely be UDFA guys. The one that has the best chance of being drafted is Jamir Watkins from Florida State. But I do have a UDFA grade on him, but he might get catapulted into the late second round due to some players backing out of the NBA draft before the early withdrawal date a couple weeks ago. But he is also one of the players that intrigues me the most. When I think of those 4 players that I just showed you on that list, the only 2 that really catch my eye in terms of a little bit of interest is Jamir Watkins from Florida State and then Zeke Mayo from Kansas. Both of them could be UDFA guys or late second round targets where the Heat could ultimately buy a second round pick. So let's talk about the 2 prospects. We'll start with Jamir Watkins and Zeke Mayo's height. Watkins was at the NBA Combine, so I have his official measurements. Came in at 6'5" barefoot with a really good +7 wingspan at 6'11 and a quarter. Zeke Mayo was not at the NBA Combine. I could not find his official measurements, but there are rumors that he is 6'4". That is his actual height. But then his wingspan, -1, 6'3". That is a major concern. We're going to talk about these prospects more in depth here in a second. But just off first glance, and if you're a hoop head and watch them play college basketball because they both played at Power 5 schools, which prospect intrigues you the most? Is it Jamir Watkins, type JW? Is it Zeke Mayo, type the ZMs? Let's look at what they did last season for their respective squads. Both of them played over 30 games and were heavily featured in their teams. Watkins, actually, he was the leading guy on Florida State, averaging 18.5 points per game, a really high 30.6% usage rate. But you see there with his field goal percentage and 3-point percentage, not the most efficient guy. Watkins does get on the glass and rebounds well for his size at 6'6", 6'7", with shoes on, uses that wingspan well. Zeke Mayo, he is someone who can light it up from 3, 42.2% from beyond the arc. Transfer from South Dakota State, was one of the top players in his conference prior to going to Kansas and was one of the highest paid transfers that past season. And he did pay it off pretty well down the stretch of that year, although Kansas had a pretty down season. So when you look at the 2 at a broad lens, Watkins is a slashing wing who is very solid defensively when he puts his mind to it. The issue with Watkins is that he did have that super high 30.6% usage rate, so he did not take the defensive end of the floor as serious as he potentially could at the NBA level, where he is not being relied upon for being the main offensive creator. Now, Zeke Mayo, he is more of a finesse guard, an off-ball shooter who is just consistently running around the half-court set on pin downs, on curls, looking to find any space to get up a three-point shot. And as you saw with that 42% three-point mark, he can do that to you. And the advanced numbers on Zeke Mayo are very, very kind. Anything above 55% for a collegiate player, especially a guard or wing, in terms of true shooting percentage is really, really impressive. He had a 59.5 true shooting percentage last year for the Jayhawks, and that is really impressive when you factor in his three-point rate was 56.1%. That is a just ridiculous mark of shots coming from beyond the arc. And then you look at his jump shot, catch and shoot, and dribble jumper percentiles in terms of point per possession, 93rd percentile, 98th percentile, 82nd. He is as good and consistent as a three-point shooter as you could find. And Miami has had so much success over the last decade plus of finding shooters in the UDFA. Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent. I'll be honest, Zeke Mayo, if he goes undrafted, would be a player I expect Miami to hold a lot of interest in, to potentially replenish that shooting development type of player they have often had. Let's segue back to Jamir Watkins here, because there's a lot to like with him in terms of his athleticism, his build, his defense, his slashing, but there's also a lot that scares me away. He is a pure slasher. 36% of his shots came at the rim. Now, he did shoot 58%, so relatively solid, but nothing otherworldly to where you can say, oh my God, he is a great, great slasher. And the fact that he's not a good shooter concerns me as well. Shot 37% in terms of effective field goal percentage off the dribble, 19th percentile, so cannot do that, cannot kind of keep defenders on their toes by pulling up from 10 to 15 feet. No, it's either he's going to the rim or shooting a three. But even when he gets to the rim, when you not factor in dunks and shots actually inside the restricted area, he shot 45.2% on layups. So he's a slasher who doesn't even slash that well. You're signing Watkins or drafting Watkins, trusting your developmental staff, and taking a chance on his ability to defend and maybe blossom into a little bit of a three-point shooter. Watkins is intriguing, but I really am not that high on him. It's why I have a UDFA grade on him as well as Zeke Mayo. Coming up here in the back half of today's show, we're going to segue from UDFA targets into where I'm honing in on as my draft targets at pick number 20, but then also look at some potential UDFA and second-round picks the Heat could buy as well. But we got to start with talking about Prize Picks here, the sponsor on today's Heat Report video. I play Prize Picks every single day, and I hope you join me because it's just so fun to spice up watching sports, and it's easy to play as well. All you do is pick more or less on a fewer player stat projections, and you can't miss out on the last chance to get some basketball action as we're heading towards crowning a first-time champ in more than 50 years. Don't miss your last chance to cash in on the history. Pick more or less on a few player stat projections like points, rebounds, assists, or others like three-point makes as well for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. I made an entry for the entire series between Oklahoma City and Indiana. I went less than Tyrese Halliburton, 18 points per game, less than Andrew Nembhard, 1.2 three-pointers made, and then more than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 33.1 points per game. Three-player entry there, but you can play any way you want. They have weekly specials like Flex Friday, Taco Tuesday. Join me and the millions of others today. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's segue and transition now into those Miami Heat draft targets with the 20th overall pick. We'll see if Miami ultimately keeps the pick, but I am starting to kind of want them to. Now, if the 20th pick is required to get a Kevin Durant, a Ja Morant, I'm not going to complain about that, but I really do actually hope they end up keeping this pick because I think the players that could be available at 20, there is a really solid blend of high upside guys that could blossom into potential all-star caliber players, but there's also a blend of players that know their role and will just be consistent NBA professionals, in my opinion, for at least 6+ seasons. So when I think of my guys, because I think there's a group of 5 prospects that the Heat will have a choice between. Now, do I believe all 5 of these guys will be there at the 20th pick? No. Do I think there will at least be 1 or 2? Probably closer to 2? Yes, I do. These are the 5 that I'm becoming very, very intrigued with. Nolan Traore, the guard from France. I am just really starting to get a really good feeling about him. He was a projected top 10 pick coming into this year, struggled a little bit with his efficiency, his turnover rate, but has one of the best assist rates in the class, 39%, that being that. He's 6'3", barefoot with a 6'8" wingspan. He's the fastest player in this NBA draft. So his size, his speed, his playmaking, if he's able to hone in on his jumper and his floater game, he is going to potentially blossom into an awesome point guard. Everybody knows my thoughts on Rasheer Fleming, 6'9", 7'5" wingspan, elite 3 and D, 4 or 5 on a small ball setting. Cedric Howard is rising up boards. I am really high on Nick Clifford, although I do not know if he is going to be there. Sounds like he could go late lottery, just outside the lottery. Heck, I would take him if I was the Houston Rockets with the 10th overall pick if they keep that selection. And then Ben Seraph is probably the guy that's most likely to be here, where if I had to bank on one of these guys absolutely being available at 20, Seraph is that 6'6", good functional size. The Heat have already did a lot of homework. At least they've been reported to be interested in Seraph. 6'6", lefty, crafty, not really good athletically, but can play off ball, can play on ball, and played really well down the stretch for Ratio Farm Ulm in the German League playoffs alongside Noah Senge, a potential lottery pick. So these are the 5 guys where if the Heat ultimately called their names with the 20th overall pick, I would be sitting back and I would honestly be cracking a pretty good smile. More little draft targets to talk about here in a second, but subscribe for daily Miami Heat coverage on YouTube, whether it is draft talk, trade rumors, and more. I'm Nic Rohloff, diehard Heat fan, bringing you Heat content for Heat fans. Join us today. Now, I do want this to be said. There are 4 prospects that would have been on that list, but I don't think ultimately are there. But if these 4 were on the board at 20, they would be higher than any of the 5 games I just mentioned. Agor Demen, who has been sliding a little bit. I do think he goes ahead of 9 or 20, but you never know. Carter Bryant, I think, is a mid-first-round pick lock, but you never know. Jace Richardson, probably the most likely guy out of this list to be there. I was a little bit lower on him originally. I think I would still take Nolan Traore over Jace Richardson, so maybe that's the only player I would take over Jace, but I think I'm getting a little bit higher on Richardson. Really good off-ball guy, high feel, can play on-ball, can play off-ball. Just a really good basketball player overall. And Kasper Siakachonis, I think he goes in the lottery, but there's a couple mock drafts out there from Kevin O'Connor that has him sliding outside the lottery. So you never know. Now let's segue from the 20th overall pick over to some second-round UDFA targets. Now, are these players all going to be available in the second round? Yes. Are these players going to be available in undrafted free agency? No, I would say probably half of them ultimately get drafted, but I would like to see the Heat maybe contemplate trading up into the second round to get one of them or trying to wait till UDFA. Chaz Lanier is interesting. Good shooter from Tennessee. Kobe Brea, knockdown shooter from Kentucky. Very, very interesting. Kobe Sanders catches my eye a lot. Elijah Martin is interesting. I like Micah Peavy as well. I think these guys are really established collegiate players that are all good at something. Now, are they good at everything? No, but they're good and above average at something, whether it's shooting, whether it's defense, athleticism, rim protection, playmaking, to where it could be beneficial to get them in the Heat's developmental system and at least on the Summer League squad. The point is this, and I will also admit this, slim pickings in the second round this year. A lot of reasons for that. NIL has changed a lot when it comes to the NBA draft because some of these players that you would have thought would normally stay in the draft aren't. LeBaron Philon from Alabama, Miles Byrd from San Diego State, Todd Pettiford for Auburn. These players were all probably like late first round pick people, but they're like, well, maybe we'll just go back to college, make $2-3 million in NIL, come back next year and maybe be a lotto pick. So you see a lot of players who likely weren't going to get drafted get pushed up into draft range in the second round because of these players dropping out of the draft. So not as many good players in the second round as you would normally find, which makes it very important for you to have a good developmental staff and eye for talent in your front office, which Miami does actually have. So I showed a lot of different NBA draft players on this video. Name a sleeper UDFA target. I showed 10 potential second rounder UDFA guys. Let me know yours. I'm going to give 2 players here in a second, but let me know if you know ball. Honestly, out of that list, 2 players I didn't really mention overall, Mark Sears and Andrew Nembhard. Not Andrew Nembhard. Ryan Nembhard, his younger brother. Sorry, I get those confused. Not really, because they don't really play similarly, but I do like Ryan Nemhart because he shares a lot of the same values as his brother Andrew. He's a winner. He can play make. He isn't the best shooter, but he can run a pick and roll. Now, it might be redundant if you still like Isaiah Stevens because they are very similar in terms of undersized guards that can shoot it, but are primarily playmakers. Mark Sears is a fascinating player. He drew Jalen Brunson comparisons because of he's an undersized lefty, light-skinned point guard, if we're going to be honest here. But he can flat out shoot the rock, and he could get hot in a second, and would be a very fascinating player to bring in as well. Those are two guards that I'm intrigued with adding to the Heat's developmental staff, maybe on a two-way or an Exhibit 10 following the NBA draft. And we'll be here for that. UDFAs, the Heat sign, the people they draft, and anything in between. So join the channel today, and as always, go Heat.